YouTube tutorial. This is Andrew Broussard. With this one, I'm going to be doing a little bit of talking and drawing in the beginning. So I will post down below in the comments when the painting starts. Okay, so today is Sunday. Nice lazy Sunday. It's been raining since last night. It's hard to get out of bed listening to that rain, which I think is one of the best things on a Sunday, just laying there listening to that. Yesterday, I produced my first video where I did a lot of talking in the beginning and coming up with an idea and plan. And I think I'm going to piggyback off of that, where I won't be able to do this every video. I think it'll get quite mentally exhausting for me, and the videos wind up spanning a long time frame. So I think it'll be fun having some videos with drawings and ideas and then painting, some from photographs, some from just off the top of my head, other ones just having time-lapse videos. So there'll be kind of a variety on here. I did get some good feedback on the previous one where people felt that it was quite interesting. One lady, Miss Ann, had said that she, started looking at streetlights differently while they were driving yesterday. So that's really cool, and I really appreciate that. People are giving me feedback and taking something away from it. If you have anything, any constructive criticism, any way you want me to approach things differently or think that I can do better, please let me know. I keep on mentioning Etsy accounts. I think last night I started looking at it. I put one together, so I'm going to link that down below. I haven't uploaded anything yet, but I'll get started later on today. It's just that there was some sort of renewal fee on the page, so I got to figure out how often listings stay up for. I have to figure out that whole part of it. And I had a few of the triangular boxes from the US Post Office, and they're the small size tubes, but they're still quite big. I'm looking at one right now. It has to be at least 14 inches long. No, more than that. I think 18 inches long, and that's their small size. But I think it's a priority box, so I did a little experiment where I just rolled up the painting. I didn't put a rubber band around it yet, but it rolls up nicely without doing any damage to this paper. This is the 140 weight, 100% cotton, and with the watercolors and the application levels, it shouldn't crinkle the paper. You would just lay it out flat when you received it, and it shouldn't do any cracks in the watercolor. Gouache, there might be a risk there, but I'm not using gouache currently. So that's the plan right now. Putting that together, how I can do that, priority mail, make the shipping easier and whatnot. So we'll see. All right, now that rambles out the way, I want to do another one with street lights. So what I was thinking was a more ambitious one than yesterday's, where we'll have multiple street lights. Yesterday's painting, we had a single light source, and from that we had the illumination around it. We had a little bit of light coming through the trees. Things darkened as we went away from it, and as we came forward, it was catching shadows. And it kind of drew your focus to that one spot. This time, I think, like I said, I want multiple street lights, and I don't have any photos of it. Like I had said, my phone does not take great nighttime photography. I have a camera that does, but I just don't carry it with me every day. But I think it's going to be inspired by the road alongside my house. And yesterday, I had talked about if I have a very linear one with street lights, which I believe I have seen paintings of before, it would be very very like showing the effect of man on nature, and it would be very organized, city construction, I'd feel, and whatnot. An example of this, it's been years since I had been there, but I believe Central Park has a row like that, where you have that walkway, everything for the most part from memory looks in that fashion, you know, very perspective oriented. I kind of want something where we're going to have an up and down of these lights, where it has that general vibe to give us perspective and recede back in, but they aren't in a perfect straight line. And this is going to be due to tilting poles. I'm not sure how much this is showing up on this size that I'm drawing in the distance that I'm at, but that's kind of the concept I want to work with, where we have an irregularity with that ground. So that being said, between these, we're going to have a path. Usually I like to go towards just water, maybe like, yeah, mainly my paths are water, but, and we do have that down here in Louisiana, where we'll have telephone pole lines going down alongside a coulee or down a canal, leading south towards the intracoastal passageway. But I kind of feel like a lot of people wouldn't get that, like on the international level of people looking at it. Local people who go into the swamps and all that, I think would have kind of know about that, but I kind of want to avoid that. So we're going to have a road. We might make it an old-timey type road, and we'll see. We might even just paint it in, then wipe out to give us that path. Then, having those, I'll have that random pattern of receding lights. So we're going to have a lot of glowing spots. And what I need to keep in mind is that I'm going to have a lot of foliage around these. The road that I'm referring to has a lot of trees on either side. There's going to be trees behind, and they're going to essentially be, I think, destroyed, omitted. They're going to be so lightened up. The atmospheric effect from those lights are going to be strong that we're not going to see where it passed right behind it. And I think that'll help place the street lamps inside the painting, as opposed to seeming like we have numerous light sources from the sky, as if we had multiple suns or moons shining in. And then in front, we'll have our darker trees. So we're going to have like an interesting overlap taking place. It's going to be, I think, pretty challenging, but a pretty interesting approach. Whether this painting is going to be successful or not, I'm not sure. But that's the idea. If we were to look down from the sky, pole, 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 we wouldn't see that perspective looking down from the sky, but I'm just kind of showing that this is the receding. This would be where we're looking from the front, looking down. If we have trees, they make boxes for trees. There's going to be a lot of luminosity on those trees, because it's getting hit from multiple light sources. A lot of luminosity. You know, light rays coming in, light rays coming in, catching light rays. If we have another pull over here, catching light rays. So it's a more of a bombardment on those trees that are going to be behind our front line. So it should be very light and faded, I believe. And then anything in the front, and once again, squares being in the front, let's say this is a square, it's only catching light on the back. It might be catching light from the sides here coming across. So we may have the lighted glow taking place. That light is traveling a distance. There is an equation for intensity of light, and it's based off of, I believe it's the three-dimensional spherical surface that we're working with. These are just two-dimensional, but if you have a light source come out, these are light rays. This is just a two-dimensional version. You see how concentrated it is right here? The lights are closer together. Here, the same rays are further apart, so there's less intensity taking place. And that happens. Here's a three-dimensional object. If we have the light source on the inside, comes out, comes out, comes out. If we had a closer inside surface, it would hit more together. Outside, it would be bigger. So, I don't have the formula in front of me. It's probably, it's probably over the area of that square, the surface or something like that. Anyway, that's the physics concepts that I'm kind of keeping in mind, and I'm not working from a photo or anything. This is just from kind of memory or just imagination while I'm painting this. Overall, we have a lot of light sources. There's going to be a lot of interplay. Trees in the background are going to have the lightest effect on it. It's going to be the brightest effect. Trees in the front ground, we're going to have the darkest facing us, but we're going to catch some ambient light from the sides. Those light rays, because of the distance they're traveling, are not going to be super strong, but it is going to have a soft glow on the edges of those. That being said, I think I'm ready to try to attempt this. Painting wise, we used raw sienna yesterday. So, let me pull this pen out again. I love this pen. This is a Noodler's Boston Safety Pen. It's a good artist pen where the nib retracts and actually sits inside the barrel itself with the ink, so it stays coated in ink and it won't dry up for the most part. You can potentially use India inks in it, like the only fountain pen you can do that, but I haven't tried that yet. So that's something, if you're interested in, I'll explore down the line. Anyway, back to where I was. Colors. We used our raw sienna yesterday. That was our initial wet and wet. We used the paper towel to lift center of light. This gave us a interesting effect where we would have a variation in tone, a variation in color, and it gives us an atmospheric effect rather than just having a straight bright light. Okay, so we're going to have that there. We're going to have to do that in numerous spots. So I think essentially in the first wet and wet, I'll place in my raw siennas. Then I used progressively increasing mixtures of blues and earth tones like the siennas, burnt umber. Spelled earth wrong. Trying to achieve a darkness. Eventually I went to lamp black. But the lamp black, I think, benefited the most in the foreground. And I'm a little embarrassed. I'm not sure if foreground has that E there or not. But I teach math and physics. I'm not the best speller. But that's no excuse. I should be a better speller at this point, especially when I use that word every day with painting. So raw sienna for our lights, blues for our earth tones, blues and darks, probably Payne's gray. And lamp black for some foreground elements. I think we may have everything addressed that I need to keep in mind. So without further ado, this is the part in the video where the painting will get started. We are going to take the hake and we're going to saturate this paper. So I'm going to saturate it. I have a little bit of pigment on the brush left from yesterday. It looks like maybe I didn't clean it the best. And while the paper soaks this up and stretches and warps and whatnot, we'll set up the palette. Okay. So, what did we say we were going to use? We're going to use the raw sienna. So let me get some more on there. I think I'm going to stay away from lemon yellow. It might come in just to get some variation in tone, color, whatnot in the lights. We'll see. Burnt umber, my workhorse. I already have some light red on the palette. I might use that. I'll just get it wet. I think yesterday when I had wiped at the very center light, I might have wet it and then, dampened it with the paper towel, like lifted it and then dampened it again with that spray bottle. So a spray bottle is a very good tool to have. So we're looking at Payne's gray, most likely going to use some of that. I used Indie Blue yesterday. I might just wet the phthalo blue and try that out this time. Phthalo blue mixes with the earth colors, but I believe it goes more towards the greenish side, like a dark green. But it might get me the darks we want. Then we need our ultramarine. We should be good. So the paper is absorbing that water in it. And do another coat after I flatten out. Find that this method is better for me than taping paper down, especially with the wet and wet, because I can't readjust it in that fashion. So if I was doing wet and wet, it would start to bubble up, but I wouldn't be able to do this. But you go to your hardware store, you get it cut to size, and you get some clips. Once again, this is 11 by 15 piece of paper, I believe. I'm not sure what we have this cut at. Actually, I think on the bottom of this, yep, I have a nut glued to it, and that nut actually fits on the tripod, so that if I wanted to go paint in the field, I could actually screw this onto my tripod. All right, so let's put in our raw sienna washes, and we're going to put it in the fashion of where the light posts are going to be. I'm trying to go not get too linear with it. When I lift it up, when I draw in the street lamps, we're going to use that to add variety. We are going to get reflected on the road, and the trees are going to catch some of this light as well. So that right off the bat was very weird for me. That was the first time doing something like that. Now I'm going to have my darks, and let's do ultramarine and burnt umber. This is more of a gray. This is going to be closer to these sources of light. There's going to be a transition to get that atmospheric effect. Usually I do the broad sweeps left to right, but due to placement, it's not a possibility. You could, of course, use masking fluid. There's, I think, two approaches you could do with masking fluid. Mask out the lights, and then paint in this gray around it. Pull them up at the end and paint in the light from the lampposts. Or you can you could paint in the raw siennas, dry it, put in the masking fluid on top of the raw sienna, and then do straight washes over that. And then whenever you lift it, you'll have that raw sienna underneath. I think there's a fellow on YouTube, there might be a video where the guy does that experiment. There is some pigment that gets lifted in that case in the removal process, but it might be something that you want to experiment with. Okay, so here's the sky. And we're going to have parts of the ground that are going to be dark. Okay. Let me get some extreme dark. Let's try that phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is such a strong pigment. I think of it as like a mentholated Vicks Vapor Rub type color. This is mixed with burnt umber. It's also a staining pigment, so it's hard to lift. I'm just going to feed in a few spots. Okay, I believe the sky will get darker towards the very top. The ambient light is usually closer to the horizon, or light pollution is closer to the horizon. I want my darks to come in on the side. This is going to be where our road recedes back. Let's come forward. We're going to have shadows that cross over it. I think it's beneficial if I come on more extreme angle, different angles here than here, to make it more natural. That's what I was talking about earlier with like Central Park, very human influenced. That's going to be the background, like a background tree line. Let's grab a paper towel. We'll lift where we want our light post to be. I don't want them to be in a straight line. So the center for this one, we'll put right here. Center for this one, right here. I could actually have a few. And I could always come back later. The raw sienna should be able to lift pretty easily. We get a lower point, higher point right there. So it's just a broken, it has that general feel, but just a broken pattern. I know I'm repeating that a lot, but hopefully you get the idea. Okay, now we need to find the rigger brush. And of course it falls at the bottom. Now the rigger I'm going to use to start modeling those far trees. Let's mix ultramarine with, there's a little light red in this mixture. Now remember, these are going to be broken up by the light. So they'll start at the bottom. The light will be so intense that we won't be able to see through it. And these little guys, not too much of them will show through at the end, but the few that do will be very important. Now, here's my line. Here's the base, more or less, of the posts, base of the posts. And all these guys are behind the post. Now we may have to do later on a large tree or two here, but behind this post. And we're going to have to get more intense with the pigment at that point. I was thinking about how, I have it somewhere. Oh, it's right here. One thing that crossed my mind, which I want to mess with, is the granulating medium. If you mix a lot of ultramarine mixtures, when you paint with it, it's a granulating paint and it has a texture to it. Kind of like how this isn't a flat wash, if there's a texture there. And I think that mixed into raw sienna would give a nice vibrating effect to the light source. I just never opened it, never utilized it. But if it works the way I'm thinking it'll work, it'd be a game changer potentially. Maybe we'll try that in the next painting. I think today I'll be able to get a few paintings done. I think at least another one after this. All right. So here's our road. Shadows are going to cross it. We're going to probably have to darken it up later on. But we have everything, the basics behind the trees worked out, behind the posts. Now, let's mix a stronger dark. Let's see how well we can lay this in closer. Still going to be blocked. This side will be lighter if it goes alongside it. This guy's going to have some dark ones. Let's hide it too. The left side of these trunks and trees will be darker as well. Dark. Now remember, this is just essentially a made-up scene, like the composition, not so much, but just everything that's taking place here is made up, just kind of based off of what science makes sense with it. I think if I had a photo, I'd have a hard time, but I would have to have a similar approach, so I would have to do the same thought process beforehand. Not like I'm over here trying to say this is the most difficult thing in the world. I'm just saying art is often a series of questions and trying to find a solution to it. In fact, a lot of artists painting textbooks will have, question answer sections or complete books written about how to approach different questions that might come up. With these, I've done a lot of rigger work today and yesterday, which adds interesting components. But when you do the rigger, it's best to still act it like you're using the hake, I guess, to kind of throw your mind out the way from it. All right. Then here's the road. Let's darken up that overhang. We haven't used Payne's Gray yet. I still haven't used it. I'm trying to see if we can keep this minimal. Need a lot darker than that. Ultramarine, burnt umber. Everything's still super wet, which is great. Take some raw sienna, put that in this ground for where it's going to highlight the ground. And then when we put our trees that are going to be closer to us on this side of the poles, we'll then put shadows in over these. But we are going to get some light on the road, so we'll just, not really scientifically putting these in, just going for variety. What I should be doing is taking, okay, here's the post, here's where it comes down, here's the light. So to make everything work, that is going to have to line up in an L shape, I think. Okay, now I want to pull water out of this. I am still going over this essentially as wet and wet. But I'm going to mix a strong, more pure pigment mixture. I talk about that a lot. When you do the wet and wet, as you progress, increase pigment concentration, paint concentration versus water to prevent backruns. There will be fuzzing that takes place on these trees, but let's work from forward back. So there's one tree. He's going to cast a shadow. His shadow is going to be this way and that. There's going to be kind of a lot of different play and lights that happen back here because that illumination I was telling you about coming from across and from behind. And I believe we'll have a light highlight along the edge of that due to those. I may have to just darken up the back side and leave that front side the way it is. Our next one, this is where I want to break up the monotony of symmetry. So this guy will come in front. And I'm going to give him an offshoot at the base. All right. Shadows as well, but I did that to change things up. I'll say that there'll be a little bit of shadow here. Okay. Strong concentration of paint. I could use phthalo blue here. I'm mixing it with phthalo blue. The next tree that's in front, bring them up. That. He may have light on both sides. He's going to start setting one of those weird shadows. But I do need to put grass structure around him to help him sit. And we'll just recede backwards. As we recede, perspective-wise, these ones are going to get closer, and they won't be as thick. If you see one in nature that is thicker, you most likely want to take an artistic liberty to thin them. All right. And these guys might have shadows that they influence with the light shining alongside them. This one, I'm not going to want them directly across from each other, so let's recede one back here. And I'll do some rigor, groundwork, etc. Okay. So now I'm doing this to kind of pull out some highlights on either side to talk about. I kind of explained why earlier in the video, where it might catch light. I'm just taking this card, just kind of pushing. And I am going to come in with the darker lamp black, I think, at some points, just to get that extreme black taking place. And I am going to eventually have to weave in these lamp posts. Maybe I should do that now then. Lamp post here. I was looking at a lamppost last night after all that talking. Yep, my life is exciting. And I was looking at it, looking at the effect on the trees, and then I was looking at the lamppost, and I started noticing all the wires and all the things hooked up to it and how it moved around and whatnot. And this one's kind of hidden back here. We'll do it just like that. I should lighten these as I recede back due to aerial perspective and the fact that they are catching a lot of their lone light that they're projecting. But yeah, okay, so I was talking about looking at lampposts, and when I looked close, I started noticing all the different wires and stuff hanging from it. And I think visually, we may not want to add all those elements to those posts. I think we could. I think there's painters that would, painters that wouldn't, different schools of thought, where one school would be your mind doesn't take it in all at once, where, like I said, it took me a while to realize, oh wait, there's actually a part coming over top and wires and whatnot like that right there. And I think I might give it to a little bit of the foreground ones, but I really wouldn't catch it unless I was really, really staring. So it gives you the idea of in the moment. You can do wires that pass back. Maybe we'll catch a little bit of that top, but maybe we wouldn't see it for those. Okay, these trees, I just put the trunks in, so let's actually give them some life and some limbs. We'll look at foliage. We'll do foliage around the bases of these things. And then from there, things will start being finished. So these branches are going to pass in front of all light sources. No rhyme or reason, just that there's going to be less that we see back here as we recede. Like I said, we're going to do a little bit with foliage. try to give these a more organic feel. As you recede back, lighter tree branches. 2 reasons: aerial perspective and the fact that they have that light shining all around them and they're catching a lot of that. So it's a thinner, in theory, it's a thinner, darker piece, but because of the light enveloping it, it's going to seem lighter. So we're doing lighter there. On the back sides and some spots, I'll do some darker ones. And some foliage around the bottom, and I'll come in with darks. Let's take the hake. Dang it. Let's do ultramarine and burnt umber. Now this foliage is going to come in, but the undersides are going to be lit. I don't mean like lit, that's fire, yo. I mean like they're going to catch light. And we'll probably have darker highlights on the top portion. Okay, like I said, it was going to be lighter, so let's get this cleaned off. I want this to be light. If I had an extra eyedropper around here, I would mix the granulating medium into it to see. For maximum effect, dilute color generously with medium alone, and always work with painting horizontal. So painting is horizontal. What if we take a risk and I'm going to clear a spot on the palette. Let's see if we can get this effect. So I'm clearing a spot on the palette. I'm going to take the end Okay, so I have a little bit on my palette. Then I'll mix the raw sienna into that. And we'll see, since I have it on the brush, I'll do that there. And then I have the hake. Do the underside of these trees. I may not have enough. May not have put enough of that granulating medium. But that's the parts that are going to get the light. The granulating medium might have to, for my purposes, might have to be in the beginning, the initial step. Okay. I don't know if we used any burnt sienna in this, but let's get some on there. We can put that in. Ooh, that's way too much. Nice, some interest. And we'll weave in some more branches. This is helping those posts sit in place, I think. I feel like I put a lot of that burnt sienna down, so let's lift that. Let's now go over to our lamp black. And I do feel like some of these trees are going to have darkest possible. My foreground or closer foliage or of the ground is going to be darker. One of the things I really do love is taking a long line and bringing that up and maybe dotting along it as if it's a really young tree or a vine. This is just distinguishing the road's edge. I'm going to use a blue mix for the shadows on the road. I might just have a lot of black left on the brush. Let's take this lighter watery mix. I'll probably come in and do another foliage up on top. More concentrated pigment. It recedes back here. I just feel like it's going to something that doesn't make sense, so maybe it's a curve. Okay, so trying to get the effect of a curve right there. Let's see what we want to do. I probably need to just lift a little bit right there in that road as if there's a light coming from back there. That might help. It might affect the way it sits though, visually. Let's see, I believe I said we were going to do one more go with foliage at the top, so let's get that done. Ultramarine, umber, sienna, just trying to darken it and knock down the blue. Let's use phthalo blue. So we got the road lit, knocking back some of this blue. Let's get some lamp black on here for some super darks. This is the overhang from the trees that are closest to us. Kind of kill off stuff on the side. Let me stand up and take a look. Okay, it looks pretty interesting. I think so far we've learned quite a bit from this one. And what I'm trying to do before calling it done is kind of look at the big picture, see if there's anything that is out of place, anything that you can really bring some more life into, some interest and texture. You could, just for the fun of it, add a little bit of scrapes, add variety. Could have fun with some more darks. But at this point, it's pretty much done. We could utilize gesso, not gesso, gouache, or some other fun stuff for highlights, gouache or the Buff Titan. But in the interest of limiting the palette, since if you're following along you might not have those things, or you might not like using those, so I'll try to avoid that for this one. Black. Lemon yellow. No, raw sienna. Wanted to highlight some stuff. That might be a little too bold. Add a little accent with that. This was fun. It's a lot of thinking for this one, but had stuff that I needed to answer for myself. And even if something doesn't come out good or doesn't sell, I think for the most part, every painting you do, you better yourself in some way, shape, or form. We could put a couple walking down this road, or a person right in here. Let's see. Now it's just kind of that debate. See if I want to answer that. So let me dry it off. Let's think about it while I dry it. I feel that I'd be doing myself an injustice if I did not attempt to add a figure in here. I do have this sheet of paper right here, this packet. This is not watercolor paper, but I just want to kind of come up with an idea of the person. Do we want a single person? Do we want a couple walking hand in hand? I think this person would have to be relatively big and in the foreground, right in this area. I don't want to put them directly in the center. I'll put it right there. Okay, I'm going for it. I'm going to mix it dark. Give this person a cane. They're going to pass an awkward shadow from multiple directions because of the lighting. I want to feed some colors in there. You know what? Let's do alizarin. To really help them pop. Maybe even make them a little wizard. Whatever your mind wants. Holding staff. Walking along. Let's take some raw sienna. Highlight from both sides. So, I mean, whenever you paint, you could tell a story. You don't have to tell a story. Whistler, what was he quoted saying? Painting for the sake of painting, or art for the sake of art. I'm looking for my Jelly Roll pen so I could sign this one. There we go. I could add a dog with him. A lot of people do, like this road that I kind of thought of. People do walk dogs down it. Let's sign it right here. Not everything's dry yet, so I'm going to have to do another. Did I do any drawing? I think I did a little bit. Andrew Broussard. Do we want a dog? Staff in one hand, a leash in another. It's a little difficult because I'm trying to put the dog in perspective, where the dog is looking into the painting a little bit. Let's not do the whole leash dark, but just some. And that dog would probably have a highlight too. Everything should be pretty well dry. Let's toss a mat over it. I'll pull the camera off. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to, obviously follow along, post your results. Feel free to like, subscribe. I believe I will have an Etsy account set up. If you have any questions, comments, please leave those. I have a Patreon page if you want to, sign up, or, PayPal link if you want to throw anything my way for art supplies. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great evening, and thank you.